Hello, writers, and welcome to the Author Burnout Coach. Together, we will dismantle the burnout culture in book publishing and reclaim our love of stories. I am your host, Isabel Sterling, and this is episode 14. Y'all, I just got back from Austin, Texas, where I attended the 2022 Life Coach School Mastermind, and I have never been more inspired in my life. It was so good. Of course, I got a lot of amazing tools during my certification process, but this conference took those tools and made them so much deeper and more nuanced. I am so ready to get out of my comfort zone so I can evolve and become the best coach for the book industry. Best coach the book industry has ever seen. So I'll be spending the next few weeks and months integrating everything I learned, both into my coaching business and into my own personal writing practice. And then I'll be sharing a lot of that info and that process with you, starting with this episode. But first, before I get into the meat of today's podcast, I want to let you know about a masterclass I am hosting in just 2 days, Thursday, April 21st at 7 p.m. Eastern. It is called Create Better Characters with Coaching. I will be teaching attendees the basics of the self-coaching model a bit deeper than I did in episode 11. And then I'm going to show you how to use that tool in your actual fiction. It is fantastic for when you're stuck on where to go next and the plot doesn't seem to be coming together and you want to make sure that the plot is driven by the character. And my favorite way actually to use the model with characterization is solving a common problem that we get in critique. When readers will be like, your MC is acting out of character, or they'll say, the sacrifice at the end just didn't make sense, or the finale wasn't earned. All of those problems where the character does something, but the readers don't feel like it makes sense, or it doesn't feel like, well, why did they even do that in the first place? I can't track it. The model can help you figure out what is missing so that those moments actually do make sense and you get the resonance that you hoped you would. I highly recommend you attend. It's only $25. Go to isabelsterling.com/live-masterclass to register. I'll have the link in the description so you can just go in and click on it. I really hope to see you there. It is going to be phenomenal. Okay, now back with our regularly scheduled programming. Today, I'm going to teach you how to guarantee your success. And yes, even in traditional publishing, which as we know is an industry that basically has 90% of it is out of our control, we can still guarantee our success though. And the secret to making success inevitable is a concept called massive action. To start with the basic definition, and massive action is something I learned during certification, it is the commitment to taking active steps toward a goal until you reach that goal. Achieving a goal almost never happens the way we expect it will. And we need to know that and expect it and just know it's not a problem, that it's going to happen differently than we think. It's also commonly said in business that the only way we know how we'll achieve, for example, a certain financial goal is to try a bunch of shit, fail a ton, and then when you get there, then you can look back and go, aha, that's how I did it. And the same can be said in our wacky world of publishing. So for those of us who are traditionally published, there are always nuances to how we landed our first book deal that we truly could not have ever predicted the very first time we picked up a pen or opened a file on our computer or phone to write a story or a novel. So to use my personal story as an example, back in 2012, when I wrote my very first novel, I had no idea it would take me 4 novels to get an agent. And I certainly could not have guessed that I would connect with that first agent through a Twitter pitch contest for diverse authors, which is, of course, DV Pitch. And one of the reasons why I never would have guessed that was a thing that would happen for me is because in 2012, I had no idea that I was queer. I didn't learn that until 2015. So it took a hot minute. I also could not have guessed that first agent would leave Agenting 8 months later, and then I'd have to query again. There were also times along the way where I was so certain that I had written like the best book of my life and that this would definitely be the one that got an agent, only to then get a bunch of requests and no offers. And I most definitely could not have told you that my road to becoming a full-time author would include a pandemic, becoming a foster mom, getting certified as a life coach. And it definitely didn't look financially the way I thought it would either. I had this vision of having like a year's worth of money saved up before I quit my day job. And LOL, that did not happen. But I decided that it was time and that I was ready. And what's also funny is that in 2012, I didn't even know what a life coach was. Like, I didn't know that was a real job until 2019 when my mom actually introduced me to a podcast that she was listening to. And yet here I am in 2022, a certified life coach, freshly home from this huge conference, and I'm a full-time author. And none of those things happened in a way I could have predicted. And yet, despite all of that uncertainty and all of those unexpected life events, I guaranteed this result for myself, the result of being traditionally published and of being a full-time author, through massive action. And I said at the top that massive action is simply taking steps toward a goal until you reach the goal. And that is true. It's simple, but it isn't easy. Massive action requires a level of stubborn belief, and I'm very good at being stubborn. It is one of my one of my superpowers. And massive action requires you to get really, really good at failure. It's required that you become okay with being uncomfortable. And the real key, since we want to make our success inevitable without burnout, very important, is we need to learn how to be kind to ourselves through those failures. I'm going to walk you through 2 examples to illustrate how this works. One for a goal that I have achieved and one for a goal that I'm working on currently. So we'll start with just getting published, since that is a goal I imagine all of you listening have either achieved or are in the process of achieving or want to achieve. After I finished my first novel, I knew deep in my bones that I had found the thing that I was meant to do. It was more fun than anything I had ever done, and it lit up my soul in a way that's hard to describe if you're not a writer, but since you are, as you listen to this, most likely you probably either feel it now or have felt it in the past. During the point of revising that first book, I made the decision that I was going to be a published author. I made the decision that one day I would walk into Barnes & Noble and I would find my book sitting on the shelf. And specifically in the YA section, I've always loved young adult fiction, and that's sort of where I envisioned myself. So with that decision made and knowing that I would keep going no matter what, I got to work. I learned about the industry, I revised my novel, got feedback, revised it more. Eventually, I queried that novel and started brainstorming something new. And during the querying process, I got my very first partial request, and it's like sweet when I think back on it of like how much I lost my mind when I got that first request. Like, I felt amazing. I felt like I had made a step closer to my dream, like closer than I had ever been before. I remember actually my friend took me out to lunch because we were just like, I got a request. And it's so sweet looking back at that, because I didn't know then that I still had so many years of work ahead of me before I would even get my first agent. But it was proof that I was on the right path. And ultimately that single request ended in rejection. But by that point, it had been a few months and I didn't care because I knew that one day my book would be in bookstores. I had decided that I was going to make that happen. And I had a new project that I was writing that I already loved more than the first book. And then book 2 got a lot more requests from agents. Again, no offers though. Again, though, I still wasn't giving up. I was going to be published. I was going to be able to go to Barnes & Noble and see my book. So I wrote a third book. And this one got an absurd request rate. I think it was around 40 to 50% of agents wanted to read the full. And there was a couple of really close calls of I love this. I just don't think I would know where to sell it or how to position it. So I was so close. And then it still didn't come through. And I will say that this failure did hurt more than the ones before. And part of that was because I was so sure at that time that the story I'd written was the best like I could ever write. I thought, like, if this book couldn't get an agent, nothing would. Thankfully, even though I sort of had this like moment of doom and gloom, I didn't allow myself to stay there, and I was able to dust myself off and write another book. And then the fourth book, that one finally got me the agent, and we went on submission. And then I started writing my fifth book. And then a couple months later, my agent left the agency and did something else in the industry, so I had to query that fifth book. And again, I could have had this setback and be like, oh, here's proof that this isn't meant for me. I should just quit. But I didn't do that because I had already decided that I was going to have a book in bookstores, no matter fucking what. So I queried that fifth book, and then I signed with a new agent who really believed, actually still in book number 4. So we were able to send it on a second round of submission. And this ended up actually working out kind of perfectly timing wise, because the person who would become my editor had recently switched publishing houses, and I was the first book that she was able to acquire at her new publishing house, which, first of all, yay, like, huge celebration. I got the book deal and it was like amazing. But timing wise, like, if she had read it and bought it the 6 months before, I could have been at a different publishing house and then been orphaned because she left to go to Razorbill, which is where I'm published now. And that would have been a real bummer because I learned so much working with her. But here's like the thing, and this is where the massive action comes in, is that if that book had gone on submission and no one had bought it, I would have written another book and another and another and another until I got published. That is massive action. It is continuing to take step after step, continuing to fail over and over and over and learn from each failure until you reach your goal. That is how you guarantee your success, is you don't fucking give up. Sometimes I get pushback here because you can't guarantee that any one book will be the one. And that is true, but only you can decide when you are done and when you give up. Now, before I continue, I do want to give sort of like a 2-part caveat. The first is that just because you decide on a goal doesn't mean you have to keep that dream forever. There is no shame in realizing that, hey, that goal actually no longer fits with what I want for myself. So maybe you decide that indie publishing fits your goals and values more than traditional, and so you shift your goal. Or maybe you end up falling in love with a new career, or you have this new creative pursuit and you just decide, you know what, I'm not quitting because I failed. I'm choosing to end this goal because it's no longer important to me. That is totally fine. So if you choose to let go of a goal and you stop taking massive action to achieve it, just know that that is okay. You're not any less worthy. You're not less talented. There's nothing wrong with you for choosing a different path. It's not a failure. It's you chose to follow your heart and your desire to do something different. Totally fine. Like, there was definitely a point in my life where I actually went to music school and I wanted, like, my dream career was to compose music for Disney. Eventually, I realized that that goal no longer fit with who I was becoming and who I wanted to be, so I let it go. And I'm super good with that decision. I love my writing career. I love being a coach. Very happy with that decision. The second caveat I want to acknowledge is that the time and effort that it takes to achieve a goal, how long you have to actually stay in massive action and keep taking steps, can vary a ton based on many factors. And those factors include systemic obstacles of like racism and poverty and homophobia, transphobia, ableism, all of those sort of different biases in the world and just different life circumstances. Some of us have a longer path than other people. There's nothing better about getting there faster. There's nothing more moral about, having your first book be the one that gets success. Like, it does not make you better. We all have a different path. We all have a different length of journey. And I do want to give some credit to one of the presenters during the mastermind. Her name is Brig Johnson, and she was unbelievably fabulous. Loved her. And she put this so well, and she used this metaphor of going to a grocery store. And so when we drive to a grocery store, those of us who drive, we don't have a meltdown when we hit a red light. And maybe if you're not somebody who drives, maybe you take, a bus. We don't have a meltdown when the bus stops at the other stops on the way to the grocery store. We also don't time ourselves and then brag to everyone in the aisles that, well, I got to the store in 10 minutes and 13 seconds. Like, that is ridiculous. Like, we don't do that, right? We also don't panic if, we end up moving to a new apartment or a new house and now it takes 20 minutes instead of 10 to get to the store. The same is true with publishing goals. We do not need to panic when an agent that we query rejects our manuscript. We simply keep going. We don't need to quit just because our first book isn't a New York Times bestseller. We write the next one. We don't need to compare our journey to anyone else's because we all live a different distance from the store. There are some writers who their very first book gets them an agent and gets them a book deal. That exists, that happens. There are also authors whose 10th book is the one that gets an agent and gets a book deal. One is not better than the other. We just all start from a different place. And some of the things that affect where we start, we have no control over. I want you to, if you can, let go of any guilt or shame that you have that it's taking longer than you think it should. And also just acknowledge that if it took you less time than someone else, that doesn't make you better than them. You just started closer to the goal. That's all. Okay, so now that's for a goal that I achieved. I became a published author. My books are out with Razorbill. Lovely, super fun. Now I want to look at a second example of massive action, and this time I want to use a goal that I haven't achieved. And that goal is that I will be someday a New York Times best-selling author. I've decided that it's something I want to achieve, even though we all know, and if you don't know, now you know, that the New York Times bestseller list is highly curated. It's not a true reflection of just sales numbers. So acknowledging that, don't care. I want it. I'm going to get it. It's decided, it's done. So before I tell you what I'm going to do to achieve that goal, let me tell you what I am not doing, and this is just as important. I am not waiting to celebrate until I reach that goal. I am not waiting until then to love my writing career. I am not putting down any of my currently published books because they didn't hit a bestseller list. I'm not diminishing my talents. I'm not telling myself I'm not worthy. I love the books that I've written. I love my career. I fucking love my readers. I have the best readers. I think we all have the best readers, right? Because we draw our own people to us. I'm not going to shit on any of that. I'm also not going to expect that hitting a bestseller list or winning an award is going to make my life perfect. Life is always the full range of emotions, positive and negative. Reaching a goal doesn't change that. It never does. It's just really fun to aim for a goal. Okay, so with that kind of laid out, what am I actually doing to become a New York Times bestseller? I'm taking massive action, which means I am not going to stop until I achieve it. And I'm also staying open to the reality that I don't know how I'm going to achieve it yet. I know that I'm going to keep writing stories that I love. I know that I'm going to keep writing about queer girls and queer women because that is super important to me. For now, I am still very much in love with writing young adults, but maybe I will write adult at some point. And hey, maybe I'll even write a nonfiction book about writer burnout. Who knows? What I do know, though, is that I will keep going until I achieve the goal, no matter what. And then once that's done, I don't know, I'll set something new to chase after. I will always be looking for the next thing. And maybe the next thing is really leveling up my craft, and which is something I try to do with every book anyways, but I don't know. I'm going to be a bestseller. I don't know which book. I don't know when. And all I know is that between now and then, I'm going to write books I love. I'm going to learn new things. I'm going to, improve my ability to tell wonderful, fascinating stories. And eventually I'll get there. And again, I've said it already, but I really want to emphasize that I'm not chasing this goal or any goal because I think there's anything wrong with where I am right now. I set goals because it gives me a direction that I want to grow and evolve. And because it's fun, and that's the thing too, is for me, the idea of being a bestseller isn't I'm a bestseller and da-da. It's just how fucking fun, right? How fucking fun to have that many readers who are reading your work. That's the shit that I'm God, that's cool. To have my books, that are magical and there's mystery and there's nuanced queer representation, to have that in the hands of tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people, that is fucking cool and fun and exciting. It's not because there's anything wrong with where I am right now. So here is the formula for you to guarantee your own bookish success. So if you want to take notes, here's your time to take notes. So the first step is I want you to set your goal and be really specific about it. Is your goal to be traditionally published? Is it to publish independently and sell a certain number of copies in your first year? Is it to hit a bestseller list, to get a starred review, to win an award? Like, what is that goal? And also think about too, like how you think you're going to feel when you achieve that goal, and then be able to think about how you can create that feeling as you work towards it and not wait until then to feel that. So step 1, you set your goal. Step 2, I want you to brainstorm a list of things that you think you might need to do in order to achieve that goal, and remain open that there are certainly things that you don't know yet and that you'll figure out along the way. This might be, writing a new book over and over until you get one published. It could be attending workshops or going on writing retreats to level up your skills. Maybe it's investing in a writing class or an MFA. Whatever it is, just write down the list of all the things. And then step 3 is commit to massive action. And again, this is not a certain number of actions. It's not an amount of time. This is making the decision that you are going to keep going and keep trying new things forever, no matter what. So you decide ahead of time, and this is actually really key. So I want to make sure I really emphasize this, that as you're imagining continuing to move forward, know that there's going to be a fuck ton of failure. A lot, like more than you expect. And you can decide now what you're going to tell yourself when those rejections inevitably come in. How are you going to talk to yourself in a way that's encouraging and allows you to keep going? And that's it. You just repeat that step 3 over and over and over. You try new things and then they fail. Then you try something else and then it fails, and you just keep going. The massive action that you're going to take could be things like getting up early to write, working on your craft, joining a critique group, but it's also continually paying attention to how you talk to yourself. There is no beating yourself up or being an asshole to yourself because you hit a red light on the way to the grocery store. A red light doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean you go home. It just means it's a pause. It means it's going to take an extra 30 seconds to get there. A book that fails to sell on Sub doesn't mean your dream is dead. It just might take longer than you think. And I want you to give yourself grace for that. You don't have to wait until you get to the finish line to enjoy the journey. You also don't, again, give yourself grace. There are some things that are fully outside your control that just mean your journey is longer. And it's shitty. And we want to work on creating a better world that's more equitable. But don't use that against yourself as a reason to not try. As we talk about, enjoying the journey, if that is something that you struggle with, I want you to know that I am here to help you. As your coach, I can help you reconnect with why you loved writing in the first place, and will help you design a career that's burnout proof, no matter how big your goals are, so that you can truly enjoy the journey. So enrollment for my 4-month coaching program is open right now. We start May 1st. I really hope you'll join me. Just go to isabelsterling.com for more details. Again, check in the description for the link to the masterclass that is in 2 days, $25. I'm going to teach you how to use the model to make your characters better, which is just a fun way to use the model. And you can also ask me more questions at the end of that program about the actual 4-month coaching that you could do with me. So until next time, friends, I wish you happy writing and go out there and guarantee your success.